Hi, it's time for another edition of my trip to Europe in the summer of 2022. There's only one more episode after this one, so we are pretty close to completing this mission. So let's do a screen share. Here we are. Solemenis. Solemenis is a small place just north of Cagliari. Let's take a look at our map right here. Of course, this is where we've been up to this point, this being Holland up here, Paris, Barcelona. We spent some time up here in the lakes of northern Italy, and we came down through Corsica. We've seen a little bit of Sardinia. This is actually part two of Sardegna. So, and this, of course, is the larger map of Sardinia. Part one of Sardinia was from up here, Santa Teresa, Gallura, down here to Alghero. And then we came down to this location, did some surfing here. Oh, gee. And then the last episode, we came to Cagliari, and I had ridden my bike from Cagliari up here to Solemenis. This is where Dana lives. Dana, I connected with over a YouTube. No, Dana was a Facebook permaculture in Sardinia. That's how I met Dana. And remarkable as it might seem, Dana was born in Eugene. Hard to believe, but her mom took her to Italy when she was just a kid. And actually, her mom lives in Portland now. I haven't met her, but Dana stayed in Italy. So that's a pretty amazing story. So we're going to start with her. I stayed with Dana and her friend Marco for about 5 or 6 days, and she's very much also into permaculture. She and Marco have a property outside of Solemenis, and they've been out here for like over 20 years. And that's where I stayed, kind of off the grid living near Solemenis. And as I mentioned before, there is a fair amount of permaculture, counterculture in Sardinia. So what Dana and I did was visit some of these places. So that's a good deal of what we did. When I was there, she knows of some other locations. So I had a chance to visit some other permaculture people and locations. This is the kind of kitchen living area of this handmade home that she and Marco built. I've been living here for quite some time. So I became pretty familiar with this location right here. And after I'd been a couple days, Dana organized a coming together at this church up on a hill that overlooks Solemenis, and basically put out an invitation to other permaculture-minded people in the area. And we had a potluck up here, and I had a chance to meet quite a few people in the area who are into permaculture. Boy, what a view. This is up on the hilltop, and you see down here, that's Solemenis, and there's the sun setting way off in the distance. Oh, it was just an absolutely beautiful view. And I had a chance to talk with some people about their projects. It was great. It was really a lot of fun to make some new acquaintances up there on the hilltop. So this is a back road in that part of Sardinia. I mentioned before, Sardinia is pretty dry, and it's getting drier. It's nowhere near what you would call arid, but it's getting close to being semi-arid. And of course, it's a Mediterranean climate. It's dry in the summertime. Um, but these are olive trees, and there's lots of olive trees all over the place there. But this is a back road because we're going to visit a fellow who lives in this place right here. He's a French guy, and he's living in Sardegna, and he's very much into permaculture. So we had a chance to talk and visit with him. Very nice guy. This is one of his projects, is a black water filtration and dealing with bathroom toilet water, to turn it into something that's usable out in his garden. This is what his design is right here. And he, well, this is, let's see where we are. This slider here kind of likes to do its own thing here. Just hang on. There we go. So he had taken a permaculture course and was really impressed with permaculture and offered to make his place available for another permaculture intensive. I haven't been to a permaculture intensive in Sardinia, but my understanding is it's very similar to what we have here in the States. He didn't do the teaching, but he made his place available, and other people, and there's permaculture teachers there in Sardinia, and they came. This was for I think it was over the weekend, for maybe 6 or 8 weekends, and they camped out and did projects here. It's the Sardinia version of a permaculture intensive, which I have done here in the US, but they did some projects there on his property. And he told me the course filled up really fast. They put the info out and they had people sign up quite rapidly. So we had a little bit of lunch. This is inside his house, and a very nice lunch we had. And this are a couple pictures, kind of his living room, and this is looking back towards the kitchen. Outside, he had a pretty big cistern. This is not a swimming pool, it's a cistern, but he does swim in it some, but he could use a little bit more water in here. And he had solar electric, and these are some batteries here. And this is back at Dana's. This is where I had my hammock set up. They'd been out there for quite a while, and there was the remains of different projects over the years that just kind of are still out there. So a little cluttered. Yes, it was a good place to hang my hammock. And gee, the cicadas cranking up in the morning was really nice, very warm. So this is where I stayed for my several days there, out there in my hammock. And we took another field trip to a location that is under the flight path of the Cagliari airport. So every now and then, every 20, 25, 30 minutes, a plane came over and you had to stop talking because it was that loud. But a very nice place, kind of a little bit of a alternative community here. This woman here, I think she was the owner of the place, and there were 10 or 12 people who were living there, and they had some colorful stories about how they interacted with the authorities who know about what they're doing. And they had some pushback early on, but when they visited, like the mayor and the civil administration, to explain what they were doing, they actually made a lot of progress, and they don't have quite so much pushback. A lot of agriculture there. So this picture here, different kinds of raised beds, and water systems. They had a big well. They had some big agricultural, larger scale gardens. And as I said, about 10 or 12 people who were living there, had some nice conversations. So this is something of a counterculture group of people there near Cagliari. So one day, Marco and Dana and I and the kids went into Cagliari, and this is a popular beach in Cagliari. Lots of people there, very warm water. Nice place. I actually threw the frisbee some with a kid who was out in the water. Yeah, I think he's probably like 10 or 12 or something, not throwing the frisbee very far, but the guy had talent. I talked with his mom. I said, your kiddo has talent with a frisbee. And I suggested she try to find him a good frisbee because his frisbee wasn't very good. But it was a fun time. Very nice guy. We had a good time. So this is a bar that I went to in Solemenis because they had good Wi-Fi. I didn't go there to drink very much. I went there to check my email and do some work with my computer. This was a nice place. It was air conditioned. Wow, nice. It was pretty warm there, very warm. Again, you can grow citrus here, and it's getting further south. Uh, Probably they might have a frost here now and then, but probably they go through winters without really anything of a good freeze. So it's pretty mild there. Another outing, I went with Dana and Marco to have dinner with some of their friends who lived in a residential area in Cagliari. Uh, this is from the balcony of their friend's place. And there's this kind of, would love to have gone down here and see what was down here. This is somebody's private property down here, but this is what you see looking out the balcony. This is not the postcard kind of view of places in Italy. This is middle class, working class, residential here, not a lot of green, but we had a very fun evening here. I didn't have any of the horse meat, but I was told it was good. But this is just friends of Marco and Dana's and family and middle class, working class here in Cagliari. Very friendly, had a nice visit. It was good. And this is outside their door. Of course, these are apartments, and it's a pretty hard scape right here. Not a lot of trees. This back here was a school. So it was just really wonderful just to see more of what goes on, people living in town. And here is another field trip. We're going to visit a couple who lived off to a little bit to the east and south of Solemenis, towards the east coast, the eastern side of Sardegna. So this is the coming up to their driveway, and this is a really nice south side, nicely shaded. You've got to have shade. It was, again, it wasn't hot like Texas, like I know, but it was plenty warm. I'm sure it was 85, 88 the day we were here. Really nice folks. The fellow was actually had been an Air Force officer in the German Air Force, and she was Italian, and they both gained a keen interest in permaculture. I don't know how they met, but this is their place in Sardegna. So let's, once again, the slider is kind of moving around on its own. Let's see, we're going here. Yeah. So this is inside. This would be a mass, probably a rocket stove. This would be wood burning right here, and it would just heat up all of this mass right here. So this is pretty nice small scale technology. They had a very nice place. Obviously, they had money, to do these projects, and they had something like 8 or 10 acres, and their wanting was to eventually perhaps have some kind of an eco village out there, which is really exciting. They had a good deal of property. So this, yeah, okay. This is actually the place in town where Dana had bought a property, and it was definitely in need of some repair. And she has some friends helping out with that. And she wants to move into town. So this was the last day I was there. I had a really wonderful time with Dana and Marco. They introduced me to a lot of friends. I had some great field trips, some nice conversations late into the evening. It was a great visit. I really appreciated a whole lot. I hope that Dana maybe comes to visit in Oregon sometime to see her mom. I'd love to see her again. So that morning, she took me to the train station. Solemenis actually had a little train station, kind of a narrow gauge. And this, of course, is Solemenis down here. My next travel for that day was I would be going up here to Isili. This is the train right here, a funky little train. I'll show you some pictures in just a minute. I stayed the night in Isili, and the next day took the bus because I wasn't going to ride my bicycle on this next part of the trip up this way through central Sardinia. This is the hilliest part of Sardinia right here. And you could say mountains, actually, as I would find they do get snow here in the wintertime, not real unusual. I think the tallest mountain out in this area uh, may not be quite 6,000 feet, not quite 2,000 meters, but it's high enough that it's more green up here, very much green. And of course, this is the scale, 10 miles here, maybe about 15 kilometers. So these aren't great distances, but uh, it's nice to bike, but it's also nice to take the bus or the train. This is what the train looks like. These ones are not electric, it's diesel. So this was at the little train station right here. And I just love to take the train. It's just so much fun. This is inside. The windows are open. The curtains are flapping in the breeze. I'm standing by the window, looking out the whole time. I mean, and you can't. You got to be careful. You don't want to stick your head out the window because a branch might come by and slap you in the face. But a very nice car. This is where I had my bike right here. So this is on the train going towards Isili, and my uh, eventual destination the next day would be Calaganone. So these are pictures right here from the train. You can see it's quite dry, and there's always hills off in the distance somewhere. There's grapes, some agriculture, certainly some agriculture there that you see, but you would need some water to help things out because it is dry. So I arrived to one town. Uh, the train let me out, and it turned out that I needed to go to the next town. So I rode my bicycle to the next town, which is Isili. And this is just a view from the road off into Sardinia. I just think this is beautiful. I just really love the landscape here. And so I rode on to Isili. And this is a remains of the Bronze Age nauragic culture that's everywhere in Sardinia. They're known for these types of structures, different kinds of structures. I saw bits and pieces of this type of culture here and there all over Sardinia. And this is actually a pretty big one. I would imagine this probably went up a bit further as well. And there may have been some other structures here. Also, the place had a great view. It was on a little hilltop, had a very good view. So I found out that the bus that went to Nuoro, which was the next town I had to go to, leaves in the morning at like 6 o'clock. So what I ended up doing is I stayed in a hotel that night in Isili, and it was a nice place. I arrived there in the middle afternoon, so I cleaned up a little bit and went out with my bike and just explored. And I didn't have to carry all my travel gear with me. I was just out biking around this town. That's how I saw the stone tower, and I just absolutely love to explore the small towns in Italy, or really anywhere, but of course I like Italy. But this is somebody's very nice kind of patio here, a lot of potted plants, and this is, I'm just kind of passing by. Oh, that looks nice. So it's a small town. This is another view. I was in one kind of place with a view and looked up here to this place that also had a view, because I did go up here and there's a church up here. So I just meandered around with my bike, just did a lot of walking too, because I like to walk in a place like that. And you just don't know what you're going to find. This view here, there was this kind of a little, there's a place where you could drive a car, but you'd be going real slow. You might not be able to get an American car in there because they're too big. But this is just a residential area, and there was a couple of wall murals. There was a little tiny model of just sort of a little town scene that somebody had made, a small model you could look at. And this right here is you can see this kind of a little troll figure and these little birds, just kind of playful. You just have to be walking and looking around, taking your time to see stuff like this. I just went, oh, that's just so beautiful. And right around here, this spot to my left was a mural, and behind me was the little model. I talked with a couple of women who were just passing by, and I said, you know, I really like uh, the way people value where they are and just create this. This basically public art is what it is. And we talked a little bit. They asked me where I was from, so we had a nice little chat. So this is the hotel, and this is where I could put my bicycle. They let me put my bike back here, and this actually sliding door goes into their restaurant right there. So it was later in the day. I had a pretty good appetite. And what I did was I went to the hotel restaurant and I had a beer and I had a big pizza. And this was out and kind of next to a little piazza, and there were lots of kids playing, just people. This was just small town. This is just Isili. Never heard of it before, but ended up staying a night there, and just an unplanned, wonderful experience. People at the hotel were very nice. I loved this pizza right here. I would do just anything to have a pizza like that. I was able to watch people coming into the restaurant, and they're putting out tables to where later they put tables out where the kids had been playing in this little piazza, this little park, and just totally enjoyed just sitting there watching stuff and being there and enjoying this pizza and a beer. So the next morning, I was up early and I caught the bus, put the bike in the bus, and I was on my way to Nuoro. and there wasn't anybody else on the bus. And the bus driver, was a really, really nice guy. It turns out he actually lived in Isili, and um, he understood that I'm not fluent in Italian, but I know enough Italian that I can have a conversation with him. And plus, he had a pretty good voice too. So he was just like a tour guide all the way to Nuoro, telling me all this stuff that because this is his route. He knows where the penitentiary was, where there was this economic development project that probably cost 10 million euros that went belly up. Told me about this little camp area that we stopped in, going up into the mountains, where there had been times he'd been driving the bus and had to turn around because of the snow. So I just had all these stories from this guy who was just so friendly. I loved it. It was just great opportunity for me to work on my Italian. I told him that I was very interested in permaculture. I explained permaculture to him, and he was very interested in that. And he told me that he had a friend who lived there near Isili out in the country. He was actually an American guy who married a local woman, and they lived out in the country. And he was describing, they got animals, they got a garden. I think they were off grid. And he said, this sounds like your permaculture. They're living that way. And it was just great to share stories. And he gave me his email, and he said, if you ever come back, give him a call. He'd like to connect. So these are some pictures up in the mountains in this part of Sardinia. You go up high enough and it does become green, and a lot of chestnut trees grow up here. Chestnuts are a big part of life up here in these mountains. Again, this looks a lot different from some of those other pictures we've seen of Sardinia. I'm guessing down there in the lowlands, they're probably getting 23, 24 inches of rain a year. I would imagine up here it's probably more like 40. So it's not only do they have more rainfall, it's not as warm up here either. So I just had a great time on this bus ride, one of my all-time favorite bus rides. And Andreas, I think, was this fellow's name. And here we're coming down from the mountains and we're getting closer to Nuoro. And here's Andreas, and just a nice guy. Wow. And it turns out I would see him again, but we'll get to that. So I got off of the bus in Nuoro, and Nuoro is kind of up in the hills. And I decided I was going to ride my bike to Calaganone. There was still plenty of time in the day, it's still probably not even 1 o'clock. And I'd been in Nuoro before, um, and I'd been on the road to Calaganone before, and I knew it was a really nice downhill from Nuoro going towards Calaganone. So this picture here, I just pretty much out of Nuoro, good sized town. I'm thinking probably about 20, 25,000, something like that. But uh, I'm going to go down into this valley area here, down this way, and then I'm going to go across these mountains right here. And then beyond this ridge and a little bit further is Calaganone, and that is on the coast. And it's one of my primary destinations. I've been in Calaganone before. So what you see here, this is another road here. I did not go up that way. I came this way and I came down that way and zigzag eventually down to this valley right here. So this is down part of the way. It's a good coast for a couple miles at least. These again, these are all olive trees. This is Nuoro up here. That previous picture, that previous photo was taken from up here, looking down towards where I am now. And this is further along. Oh my gosh, this is just, it's just so beautiful that the road is along the base. It's all pretty flat down here along the base of this escarpment right here. These are the hills we were looking at when I said I'm going back beyond those mountains. You could see that's what these mountains are right here. This is just absolutely spectacular. I was hard to keep my bike on the road because I'm looking off into these mountains so much of the time. Just beautiful. This is very scenic Sardegna. And I continue along. I would be going to Dorgali, and of course, this is Calaganone. I have a ways to go. It's a very warm day. Just love it. I just love to ride a bicycle. Plus, I knew where I was headed. Uh, Calaganone would be one of the highlights of my trip. Like I said, I'd been there before, and it was kind of a homecoming. And I was anticipating seeing some friends there as well. So you go down, and chances are at some point you got to go back up again. Uh, I went past those mountains and it was nice and flat for quite a long time. And then you go over an artificial lake, which would have been a river, which means you're kind of down at the bottom. I had to go back up again. And I knew that I had to go back up to Dorgali, but I didn't remember just how much you had to go back up. It wasn't the biggest climb of my trip, far from it, but it was still a lot. And of course, I had to push my bicycle. I couldn't ride my bike up that hill. I probably, from the low point where the bridge goes over that lake, I probably had to go up about, 250 meters, 800 feet. I'd done more than that, but it was a very warm day. And, but I just had to. There wasn't any, I could have taken the bus from Nuoro to Calaganone, but that wouldn't have been any fun. So this is, by this point, I am up above Dorgali. I've gone through Dorgali. This sign up here is going to say Calaganone, you turn left shortly. I'd been up this valley before on the previous time I'd been in Sardegna. There's a road that goes along the side of the valley and looking over to those mountains over here. So I'd been up this way before. I kind of feeling like I'm maybe not quite like I'm coming home, but to see places that you recognize, it's really a lot of fun. So that is what the scoop is. And this is a picture. Nuoro would be way back here. These are the sides of those mountains I mentioned before that were so steep and so up there. So Nuoro isn't in view, but it's back over this ridge, probably another 14 or 18 miles back over that way. And that lake would be down here. And you see just a little bit of the outskirts of Dorgali right here. But I was biking all down in this area here. I just love to see where I've been or see where I'm headed for next. So I'm taking it slow. I'm kind of purposefully just sort of savoring this approach because I know what's coming up and it's really spectacular. So the sign Calaganone, take a left-hand turn up here, like right about there. And of course, this way, taking a right and you're going to Cagliari. I previous time I'd ridden a bike from Cagliari along the east coast here to this point here. So actually, in a way, I'm kind of connecting with where I had been before. And this is the tunnel. This is a tunnel that goes through here. and then you come out the other side and you're still way above the Mediterranean, and it is some kind of an awesome view. So down below, after I go through that tunnel, is where you see Calaganone. So this is the road I've just been on. This is what I just did. This is Nuoro right here. And those mountains are right along here that I've talked about. And Dorgali is right about here. My previous time in Sardinia, I had come up this way. So I am about ready to come out of this tunnel, and it is some kind of a view. This is what you see coming out of the tunnel. This is Calaganone down here. I spent quite a while just sitting up here looking out, had a little bit of a snack. I actually cried when I was here because it is just so unbelievably beautiful, and it brought back these memories because I'd had such a good time in Calaganone the time I was there before. It was just so nice. So I rode down all that zigzagging into Calaganone, and I went to where Roberta and Cinzia, their parents, own an apartment building, and that's where they live in the summertime. Roberta lives in Rome, and Cinzia I actually visited in Trento several weeks earlier. And we said, yeah, well, I'll see you in Calaganone. So Roberta kind of manages the summer renting of apartments to people who come to Calaganone. It's a popular place for good reason. And then Cinzia lives at the top of that apartment building, and what a view. And she does snorkeling. She takes people on snorkeling on the beach and into the rocks. And that's really a fun thing. We did some of that too. So this first night that I was there, I stayed in a campground nearby. And this is the restaurant for that campground where I'd stayed before. I had actually painted some murals at the restaurant in this campground before, but they'd been painted over, so that's too bad. But anyway, we were having some pizza and just kind of having a great time catching up because I hadn't seen Roberta since the last time that I'd been in Calaganone, and that was like 20 years ago. And of course, I saw Cinzia a few weeks before that. But just so nice to see friends and just enjoy a beautiful place. So I had painted this mural here for Roberta Cinzia before when I'd been in Calaganone, and Maurizio and Cinzia had been a couple when I had been there before, and they split up. They had a dive business, a scuba diving business. So I painted this picture for them 20 years ago. This was the office for the scuba diving. Well, it's a different times have changed, but the painting is still there. So it was great to see this once again, because I stayed with them the time I was there before and did a lot of scuba diving and snorkeling. So that's part of my excitement and experience there in Calaganone. So this is a picture of the campground in Calaganone, and I'd been in this campground before, and it's just, as I mentioned before, there's a real campground culture in Europe. Almost any town, especially a town that was something of a tourist attraction, would have a campground. And I stayed here for the several days I was in Calaganone, a bit of a slope right here. I'm going towards where I had my hammock set up. And here's another view, another part of the campground. Some people in tents, some people with like camper vans, and they also had kind of the prefabs uh, of residential. That's also an option. So beautiful pine trees, just really a nice place. This campground has the restaurant, has a swimming pool. I spent a good deal of time at the swimming pool, just like to chill out and just watch people having a good time. So this was a lot of fun. And this is down by the water in Caliganone. This is a street right here, and there's oleander right in front. This is the coastline there. I'd been all along here before. The time I was here before, we went diving out in this area, and I'd also rented a kayak, and I've kayaked all along here as well. Um, so there's a really nice beach, and there's restaurants here. It's just a really nice place to visit. I just love Caliganone. And this is what one of the beaches looks like. Uh, he can only come into Caliganone in two ways. One was the road that I came in on, and there's kind of a back way to come in, which is even more uh, brake screeching than the way I came in, where it's really steep. Another way to come in to Caliganone, and this road here just dead ends right here at Califulia, and you have to walk way down here to the beach. And this along here, a lot of people snorkel, people out on the beach. This is just absolutely beautiful. It's just like a postcard. I just love the water, the color. I've been all along back here before, scuba diving and snorkeling and paddling that kayak as well. But this is Califulia, and this is the end of the road coming out of Caliganone, just a couple miles right here. And going the other way towards that back door road, you can take this gravel road up way above the med right here, and this has got to be 300 feet, 100 meters up above the med right here. I'd been up here many times before when I was in Caliganone before. This particular time, I took some food up here and I had a really nice picnic. And again, this is looking along the shoreline. Califulia is probably along in here somewhere. And then this is Caliganone, just kind of out of sight. This is a breakwater for Caliganone. So it is a pretty spectacular place. And one day, Cinzia invited me to come along with her clients to do some snorkeling. These women here are from Germany. It's mom and her two daughters, and they all spoke English as well. We had a good time. And Cinzia provides the gear, of course, and we snorkeled around a little bit. Here's a nice picture that Cinzia took because she has a camera that you can go in the water with. Just look at this shoreline right here, and the water is just it's just great. So we had a wonderful time snorkeling, and one afternoon I went with Roberta to Dorgali, and she had some errands to do. And when we finished, she took me up to see this structure right here. This is probably a nauragic structure right here. Probably dates back several, three and a half, 4,000 years right here. Just kind of this little cubby hole back in here, but they would have had to have kind of carved out this rock right here. So that was kind of fun to see that and to have some time there with Roberta. And one afternoon at the campground, I was at the picnic tables where there was Wi-Fi. I didn't have Wi-Fi where I had my hammock, but there's a picnic table, and that's close to where the restaurant is, and there are some people walking around. And I met this fellow here. He's Italian and lives actually up on Lago di Como. And I told him I'd been up there, and we had a really good talk. He's pretty good English. So we had a nice visit, and he asked me if I wanted to go up to this uh, restaurant up here on the mountainside. And this is a pretty popular kind of a thing in Europe. It's there's a term for this, maybe I'll remember it, but it's kind of a rural experience. You could stay up here. It's kind of a rural country resort, and oftentimes would have very typical types of meals. So he invited me to come along with him because he had reservations for this that evening. So we had a great time, some great conversation, and the dinner was pretty heavy on meat, but they indulged me with some vegetarian options too. So I had a very good time, and we had great conversation too. That was a lot of fun, kind of a spontaneous event right there. So by this time, it was time to be leaving Calaganone. So here's Roberta, here's Cinzia, and their parents, who I knew from before. Her dad's like 93, and I had a chance to talk with him a little bit. He had come to uh, Calaganone from mainland Italy, and he was a school teacher. I didn't know that before, but he told me he'd been a school teacher. And his wife, she actually is from a town up there in those mountains. I didn't go through the town where she was born, but I was close. So she's from Sardegna, up in those hills. So that was good. I enjoyed finding out a little bit more about their parents because I knew them from before. They were always really nice. So that day, I went up to the top of the apartment building, and this is Cinzia's place, and it's very different from the way it was when I was there before. I got my arms out here because that's approximately where I hung my hammock when I was there before. This wasn't all closed in. This was a patio, exposed, no walls, just a roof when I was there before. And Roberta, that was Roberta's space when I was there before. But since then, all this has been closed in. It is just jaw dropping. This is the view out here is just wonderful. And this is Cinzia's interior design, which is just beautiful. This is just so what she does is she rents this during the summertime and people pay to be up here. Wow, it is a view that is totally awesome. So this is part of her income as well. This is another view. There's the outdoor terrace. And this again, this is the shoreline back here where we had been before. You've seen other pictures of this kind of uh, big hill right here, but this is looking down on Calaganone and actually looking straight out from to the east from Cinzia's place is the campground. The campground's just kind of like right below here. So boy, this is magazine accommodation right here. Just absolutely beautiful. So I had to leave because I had to take a bus to Nuoro, and I wasn't going to ride my bicycle up that hill. Uh, I took the bus, got on the bus, and said my goodbyes. And this is back in Nuoro at the bus station where I'd been before just a few days earlier. So I had a little time to wait for the bus that would take me to another town because I had a rendezvous set up to meet a couple of women there who would be taking me to this weekend event that was about the Mayan calendar. And I had been told that there was going to be a permaculture element to that particular event as well. So I had some contacts and was set up to meet these women at a town about an hour and a half away, and they would take me the rest of the way tomorrow where this weekend event was going to be. But while I was waiting here, who would drive up in a bus? But it was Andreas. I saw him, he saw me. We had a good laugh and a hug, and we kind of caught up a little bit. And that was really fun because this is Andreas does this route not every day, but just by coincidence, he was driving from Isili up here to Nuoro, and it was a good laugh. So that's where we're going to end this episode right here. The next time we will pick up in when I actually rendezvous with the women for, and actually here's a sneak preview. Here they are. They're putting a bike rack on the back of this little car. They had driven from Cagliari to come to this weekend event so we could put my bike on the rack. And that was another great story being in Mara. Just enjoyed that, met a lot of people, and met some permaculture people, but that's for another time. So that is what I have. Hope you enjoyed that. It's become kind of dark, and I'm still here. I'm still here. There I am. So we'll do another episode of my trip, and the next episode that's going to be the final. So I appreciate your interest, and we'll pick up again where we left off. Okay, thanks.